Welcome back to Hardball. Joining me right now is Julie Nixon Eisenhower and David Eisenhower. Their new book, Going Home to Glory, a memoir of life with Dwight D. Eisenhower, 1961 to 1969. Welcome to you, too. It is so great to have you on this show, David and Julie. And congratulations on the book. It is heartwarming. It's about a nice time in the 60s when General Eisenhower went back to being general again, and he moved to Gettysburg. We'd actually been living there. And I guess I have to ask you some hardball questions since you're on this show. And there's nothing that you won't like to answer, I don't think. One of them is, I grew up with the phrase as a Pennsylvanian. I was actually from Philly, which isn't exactly Pennsylvania. It seems like it's a different state sometimes. Of an Eisenhower Republican, meaning somebody who was internationalist, who believed in the Marshall Plan, believed in the UN, believed in getting along with other countries, believed in all kinds of global realities, wasn't Taftite, wasn't old school, wasn't nasty about foreigners. What happened to Eisenhower Republicans? David Eisenhower, you're an historian.
Chris, good to see you again. Actually, the label Eisenhower Republican did not last a long time, and the book Going Home to Glory is our effort to sort of rekindle appreciation for the kind of figure and kind of leader that Dwight Eisenhower was. I think what Eisenhower Republicanism meant was Lincolnian. That is, people are governed best who are governed least. That's in principle, but moderation and sympathy to all points of view. There's sort of a style of government in that era, and I think that what we're trying to do in this book is to rekindle appreciation for it.
Well, you know, he had a very interesting relationship with Lyndon Johnson. He was the Republican president. He had got 2 terms, got reelected easily. And especially in that second term, he was able to work with a Democrat Congress, a really profoundly Democrat Congress. And he sort of shared the government. That's something that you don't see too much of, where he said, okay, I want foreign policy. I know what I'm doing. I won the war in Europe, so leave me alone over there. I'll give you some breaks on budget stuff, things like that.
That carries over into the period we cover in this book. In fact, Lyndon Johnson is president and Dwight Eisenhower is general, and they are cooperating during the Vietnam era. But what you begin to see in the 1960s is that this spirit of bipartisanship really begins to fray. So the ideological lines are being drawn, and the notion of moderation is sort of going out of style. But what I think the history of those times and so forth in the past shows that we do have periods, and as a democracy we can achieve periods in American history where we feel we're on the right track, where we feel that we have come up with the right direction politically and so forth, and Republicans and Democrats can experience a sort of bipartisan era of good feeling. We haven't had an era of good feeling recently. So.
I've got to get to Julie. Julie, I've got a big question for you. I remember a president who pushed for employer mandates. He was going to have every employer in the country give health insurance to his employees and her employees. And that president also believed in environment. He created the Environmental Protection Agency and the Council on Environmental Quality, and he ended the dual school system, the segregated school system in the South. He did all these kinds of things, and his name was Dick Nixon. I wonder, do you ever think back that your dad was quite the liberal by today's standards?
Well, he was a man of his times for then. Because when you said, Chris, that we look back nostalgically at the 60s, actually that was an incredibly turbulent time, building, of course, to the crescendo of the election year of 68. And I can't imagine that anyone elected in the year 68, what with riots and, over busing and over the war and race, you had to be with the times. You had to move forward. You had to give people hope. And so you had to be progressive. I think it called for it then.
Are you happy with that record of your dad's on those progressive issues? I mean, it seems like he was more progressive than Obama.
I'm really happy you mentioned ending the dual, the segregation of the Southern schools. That was one of the great achievements that's not talked about a lot. But it was really interesting going back and doing this book, because so many times when we quote Eisenhower in Going Home to Glory, it's like he's speaking to America from the grave. It's just right on point. It's what we need to hear today about
it's a great book.
moderation.
I'm reading it, and I'm going to finish it. I promise you. I'm going to finish this book.